They told the volunteers only one thing: the mission would be hazardous and dangerous. No destination, no details, no promises of coming home. What none of the men knew yet was that they were being selected for what would become the deadliest American ground mission behind enemy lines in all of World War II, 125 miles deep, in some of the worst jungle on Earth. When Japan struck Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the global Allied strategy shifted overnight. Churchill and Roosevelt agreed that defeating Hitler would remain the top priority, but the Pacific needed a new kind of soldier, one who could fight in a theater few Americans had ever heard of: Burma. The region connected India to China and served as the last land route for keeping China supplied against Japan. When Japanese forces captured Burma in 1942, they cut the Burma Road and threatened to knock China out of the war entirely. The British had been the first to try fighting deep inside this vast jungle. Under the command of the eccentric but brilliant Major General Orde Wingate, special units called the Chindits launched long-range penetration raids behind Japanese lines in 1943. They destroyed railways, ambushed convoys, and proved that aggressive jungle raids could disrupt even Japan's best troops, the veterans of the 18th Imperial Division, but the Chindits were exhausted and depleted. Wingate argued that the Allies needed an American unit trained for the same kind of warfare. Roosevelt agreed. In August 1943, at the Quebec Conference, US and British leaders approved Wingate's proposal for a new American jungle commando force, volunteers only. One of those men was radio operator Bob Pisani. They wanted radio mechanics, he recalled. We didn't know where we were going, only that it'd be dangerous. Another early volunteer was Vincent Marlowe, already a soldier before the war. We all volunteered, he said, and every one of us had to be single. The soon-to-be Marauders trained relentlessly. Day-long rifle sessions, jungle hikes with full packs, long-range navigation, and survival in heat most Americans had never experienced. Many were only 18 or 19. You feel invincible at that age, Marlowe said. That makes a good soldier. The volunteers had no name yet, no unit insignia, no defined mission, only a promise they would be sent somewhere west. In late 1943, around 2,000 men boarded the SS Lurline, a former luxury liner repurposed as a troop transport. On the way across the Pacific, the ship stopped to pick up 1,000 more volunteers. Combat veterans from Guadalcanal and other island campaigns, hard-won experience would be essential for what came next. Then one day, over the ship's radio, the orchestra played a song that gave away their destination, Song of India. 31 days after leaving California, the men stepped off at Bombay. They were now under British command, temporarily assigned to Wingate himself. This theater was officially known as CBI, China, Burma, India, what historian Barbara Tuchman later called the Forgotten War. Conditions were primitive. The Americans built their own tent city from bamboo and canvas. Wingate addressed them directly, explaining long-range operations, demolitions, ambush tactics, and the realities of facing the Japanese in Burma. Veterans from the Pacific helped train the newcomers. The unit was divided into 6 combat teams: red, white, blue, green, orange, and khaki, each designed to operate independently deep behind enemy lines. James Richardson, selected to be a frontline messenger, carried a Thompson submachine gun. Locked and ready, he said. Always. In early 1944, the Americans were given their official title, 5307 composite unit, provisional. But the press later gave them a name that stuck forever: Merrill's Marauders, after their commanding officer, Brigadier General Frank D. Merrill. Many Marauders privately believed Colonel Charles Hunter, who had trained with them since India, should have commanded, but Merrill had served on General Joseph Stilwell's staff and studied Japanese tactics before the war. Stilwell wanted him in charge. Their mission: march through the nearly impenetrable Burmese jungle, strike the elite Japanese 18th Division, cut enemy supply lines, and ultimately seize a vital all-weather airfield at Myitkyina, the final link needed to reopen the Burma Road to China. Getting to Burma was an ordeal. The Marauders first had to traverse the Ledo Road, 110 miles of mud, cliffs, rain, and blasting rock. Engineers were still carving the road out of the mountains. It took the Americans 10 days to climb it on foot, leading 300 mules loaded with mortars, ammunition, and medical supplies. Many men fell ill before seeing a single enemy soldier. Burma itself was worse. Mountains stacked like stairways to the sky, rivers that seemed endless, and vines thick enough to strangle a man. "Go over one mountain," a marauder said. "There's another behind it, and another behind that." Leeches rained from branches. Fevers of 105 degrees were common. Malaria, typhus, dysentery, and fungus infections burned through the ranks. "You weren't considered sick unless you had a fever for 3 days," one soldier said. "Otherwise, everybody would have been evacuated." The mules were lifelines, but stubborn ones. Mule skinners often had to unload the animals every break, because exhausted mules would collapse and refuse to rise. "I never saw a mule before," one skinner said. "Now I had to keep one alive." Their guides, local Kachin tribesmen, were indispensable. They knew every trail, every stream, and every Japanese patrol pattern. Without them, Merrill's Marauders would not have survived a week. Supplies came only by air. C-47s from India dropped ammunition, food, and medicine into tiny jungle clearings marked by white panels. Pilots flew so low that soldiers swore they could see the whites of the pilot's eyes. One marauder remembered catching fish by throwing grenades in the river just to supplement their rations. Deeper in Burma, 14 Nisei linguists, Japanese Americans born in the US, joined the unit. Their ability to interpret intercepted conversations and overheard chatter saved countless lives. The Marauders' first major objective was the village of Wallabum. There, on March 3, 1944, they ambushed the withdrawing Japanese 18th Division, acting as the hammer. While Chinese troops pressed from the north, Japanese soldiers attacked in waves, dozens at a time. They'd hit the ground, fire, then another wave behind them, one machine gunner recalled. "They tried to overwhelm us. We cut them down." The Japanese called the Americans ghost soldiers, never sure how many they were facing, but certain they were everywhere. After Wallabum, the Marauders fought their way toward the Shweli River region, engaging at Shaduzup, Inkangatong, and Nechpum Ga. Names few Americans had heard then or since. At Nechpum Ga, an entire battalion of Marauders became surrounded for 13 days. Japanese artillery and infantry attacks came non-stop. Water ran out. Food ran low. Ammunition dwindled. American C-47s dropped supplies under fire. Japanese anti-aircraft guns tried to shoot them down. During one drop, plastic bags filled with water burst across the hillside. During another, fried chicken and apple turnovers came down, an Easter Sunday miracle. When the encircled battalion was finally relieved, casualties were staggering. The jungle was lined with bodies, American, Japanese, and mule-alike maggots covered the dead. The stench carried for hundreds of yards. But the Marauders kept going. Their final mission was the most punishing: seize the Miet Kina airfield, the last strategic stronghold blocking Stilwell's advance into northern Burma. But to reach it, the Marauders had to cross mountains so steep that steps had to be carved for the mules. Men collapsed. Some died on the trail. Rain turned slopes into rivers of mud. On May 17, 1944, what remained of the Marauders, less than 300 combat-capable men, charged the airfield alongside Chinese forces. The Japanese defenders were caught off guard. Within hours, the Americans had taken their final objective, but the price was devastating. Of the original 3,000 volunteers, only 130 were fit for duty by the end of the mission. Every other man had been killed, wounded, captured, stricken with disease, or evacuated. On August 10, 1944, the 5,307th Composite Unit, Provisional, was formally disbanded. No parades, no public celebration. Their efforts were classified for years. Only later did historians recognize the truth. Merrill's Marauders had conducted more continuous jungle combat than any other American unit in the Pacific. Their legacy today lives on in the U.S. Army's 75th Ranger Regiment, which traces its lineage directly to these men, volunteers who walked into the jungle knowing full well that most might never walk out.